I don't think anybody in the astrological, divination, or spiritual space would ever advocate or tell you that you can address a childhood wound and just solve it like this. Even if you dive deep into the operating system of yourself with psychedelics, there's still a process of removing the detritus and the anchors that have held you back from where you were in your karmic lifetime. So that's typically things from your childhood that you continue to project into your adulthood. This can be things like lack of self-worth, lack of security in self. This can be lack of being able to make money because you don't feel like you're able to make money. You're not able to be in love because you don't feel able to receive love. And these are all typically emanations of our chironic wound, which over the weekend was highlighted by the sun making a quincux to that chironic wound. And since the sun has been in Scorpio, and we have this new moon in Scorpio week coming up, we have a jam-packed astrological week. There are so many astrological stories that are piggybacking off each other that if you are not careful and not paying attention, you might miss some of the overcurrents of what's happening. Does that mean that you're not going to grow? Absolutely not. You don't have to journal every single line and dialogue of your life, every weird synchronicity that comes up. It's not required. However, this is definitely one of those weeks, and it has been for the past couple weeks, where we really need to dive into what's coming up energetically, because when the sun moves through Scorpio as a season, every day it illuminates something about our personal underworlds, our karmic closet, that we need to make a transformation in. We need to alchemize. And as we dive into this astrological breakdown, this is the cosmological narrative for Monday and Tuesday, November 17th and 18th. So yesterday, we had that grand water trine that was reactivated by the lighter celestial body being the sun moving through Scorpio. So as we had this weekend where this childhood wound was evoked and we had a spotlight on it, and the quincux suggests that we were looking right at the childhood wound like, what now? What do I do with this thing? And trust me, I experienced this, so I'm sure that a lot of you did too, where there's this pause of recognizing that you need to heal, but you're not really sure what steps forward to make the healing take effect. Like, what do I need to do to make sure that this is not a thing that I continue to believe, I continue to invest in, I continue to project into my reality, because I need to make this change. Now, on the 17th, Mercury in his retrograde, in his detriment in Sagittarius, right at about 1 to 2 degrees of Sagittarius, is going to make a harmonious sextile to Pluto and Aquarius. The second thing we're going to look at for the 17th is the moon in Libra making a similar quincux, like we just discussed with the sun in Chiron, a similar quincux to Neptune retrograde in Pisces and Saturn retrograde in Pisces. And then on Tuesday, the sun will go conjunct with Lilith in Scorpio. Venus will make a superior position but detrimented scorpionic trine to the North Node in Pisces. And that is what we're going to look at. So let's dive into this and let's kind of pick up on some of the threads that came through this weekend. So we had that grand water trine, which illuminated exactly where in our lives, in the scorpionic area specifically, we need to make some changes to our karmic past. We need to pull the skeletons out of the closet and really deal with them, because whatever those skeletons are, basically whatever space they're taking up, that's space for our Taurian promise. Remember a couple weeks ago we had that full moon in Taurus? If you were good about it, and a good little magician, a good little witch, a good little magi, you would have done your full moon intentions, and you would have made room or tried to call something in that's going to bring you sensible pleasure in this life, physical gratification, literal physical reward and enjoyment, which is the Taurian promise. But with a full moon, we have to strip things away. And what comes this week? We have the new moon in Scorpio. And so there's clearly this slow burn process where each of these aspects is kind of playing like an incremental movement in this storyline, where we made space for us to bring in pleasure in our life. And then we get a new moon in Scorpio coming this week, which will be the conjunction of our egoic body and our emotional resonance, understanding, yes, this is the change that I need to make. These are the things that I need to release in order to get that Taurian promise. So how does Mercury play into this? Well, Mercury is making that sextile. The sextiles of the nature of Venus. Venus is in Scorpio, which means our desire body is acutely attuned towards what needs to transform in our life. Not only is our desire body feeling spicy as it does in Scorpio, because we have a tendency to have jealousy stirred up, insecurity, and that makes us more evoked to behave passionately or with intensity. There, ergo scorpionic themes when Venus is there. But with Venus and Scorpio, just kind of mundanely, we have a general sense of desire to make transformation to this area of our life. When Venus moves through Scorpio, we tend to feel our wounds evoked, these karmic wounds from our childhood past, things that we believe about ourselves, about the world, about our feelings, about other people, whatever. And we're acutely attuned to the need to change that. So with Mercury in the superior position to Pluto, this is essentially a second pass, something that has already come up before that's going to allow us an opportunity. It's Mercury in a tangible experience offering us the opportunity of data through a tangible experience that's being supported by Pluto and Aquarius, which is all about our victimization in service to the collective. Where have we been victimized that prevents us from showing up in service to the collective in the Aquarian section of our chart? And so whatever Mercury brought about to our attention today, it was essentially an opportunity for us to step into our power, which is getting us a little bit closer to changing that karmic behavior from our past. It's essentially like a checkpoint. Not that we're going to necessarily see like the massive change that needs to take place in the Scorpionic area of our chart, but this Mercury sextile to Pluto would bring about a situation where we're asked and encouraged nonetheless to stand in our power, but by standing in our power, it essentially tweaks us one step forward towards that inevitable change that we know is coming and that we desire in the Scorpionic area of our chart. I know that sounds like a lot of fluff, but essentially, like I said, it's like these are little incremental steps. They're little steps that give us the confidence and reassure to us that we're making changes in a good way, and that even if we're being asked to show up in a little bit more of a different energy in our day-to-day, it ultimately is going towards rectifying and changing some sort of belief from our past, from our personal underworld. Now, with the moon in Libra, when the moon is in Libra, we have a predisposition to be a little bit people-pleasing. We want to be diplomatic. It doesn't really matter where, like, Libra is in your chart. It's just that's the lens of the house that it's going to come through. So, for example, if you have Libra in the 4th house, it might mean that you're just a little bit more attuned to bringing diplomacy and peace to your home space. Or maybe you want to be more, like, artistic, very Venetian qualities, and produce pleasure in the home space. But again, we have this predisposition to kind of just want things to be calm, peaceful, smooth rolling, and then we'll use our voice, which is Libran, to communicate and bring that level of pleasure to our relationships. So the quincux between Neptune retrograde in Pisces and Saturn retrograde in Pisces that the moon is connecting with, that's a void point. When we look at astrology, we need to really think about it as like a storyline and like a timeline that's playing out. And so when we get quincunxes, these are void points. It's where energy comes about in two different areas of our life, and they're juxtaposing contradictory energies. We can't pursue one and pursue the other. And basically, we tend to feel the impetus to pursue both at the same time, but they end up being counterintuitive to each other, even if we're not cognizant of it. So the moon in Libra is asking for us to bring diplomacy and pleasantry to our relationships. We have a tendency to want to like people please, tell people what they want to hear as long as it keeps the peace. But the quincux suggests that it doesn't really integrate and cooperate with what Neptune and Saturn is showing us. And Saturn has been transforming us in the Piscean area of our chart, destroying and breaking down the structures of our connection with divinity and saying, rebuild. The past structure that was there wasn't good enough. It wasn't going to survive the storm. And now you need to rebuild the structure with the divine. And yeah, there's not a blueprint for you, so wing it, is basically what Saturn's saying. Neptune is saying, like, where have you been lying to yourself? Where have you been deceiving yourself about your responsibility, about your accountability, about your titleship in the collective? This isn't about being better or worse. This is about understanding who we are in terms of our soul incarnative mission so that we can align ourselves with a greater sense of authenticity and step into confidence and assertiveness so we can get done and manifest the things that we want in this world. If we didn't feel a responsibility to show up in the collective, which is what Neptune reminds us here in his retrograde position, we might all just be waiting around for each other to kind of make the world a better place instead of recognizing, hey, I'm that one that's going to make the world a better place. So the moon in that quincux position with these energies suggests that, again, we have this predisposition and proclivity to want to people please, bring harmony to the Libran areas of our life, but it doesn't really integrate with what we're learning about the structures that we're rebuilding with the divine, basically blindfolded, as well as where we've lied to ourselves in terms of our responsibility in the collective. Now on the 18th, on Tuesday, Dark Moon Lilith in Scorpio will make a conjunction with the Sun in Scorpio. And so this is fascinating because the sun is our cosmological spotlight. It is, for this day, it's going to be the focus of the day. And what's the focus of the day? Focus of the day is going to be acutely addressing that misdirected energy that Lilith represents. Lilith will oftentimes be associated with escapisms, addictions, and, like procrastinations, kind of just like putting things off in the now because we can't deal with the information of the now, so we kind of have to like misdirect that energy, and it's like it's got to go somewhere, so it ends up in an addiction, an escapism, a procrastination, some sort of misdirected energy. I don't really like to associate Dark Moon Lilith as being like a bad placement. It's literally where we've been so shamed that we're like, well, I need to take this shame energy and put it somewhere. But then in this world, you know, it's like we don't have to do that. Like we don't have to listen to like the beatings that we take from society, from culture, from family, and that's like what we have to grow into in this life. So with the sun shining that light on Dark Moon Lilith on the 18th, we're going to get a direct introspective view of fundamentally what the core root of what's needing to change in our life is and where this misdirected energy is. And between the 18th and the 19th, we're going to get that Mercury, Cazimi, and Scorpio during the new moon. And we're not going to talk about this in this video. We'll get to that in a different video tomorrow. But it's like we're like going through this 2-3 day process where we're really seeing, oh, this is why I misdirect energy in the scorpionic area of my chart, and this would be a better, you know, it's Scorpio, so it's alchemy, it's transmuting it, and like this would be a better manifestation of that energy. Now, all of that energy is being supported by the fact that Venus in her detriment of Scorpio is in the superior position shrine to the North Node in Pisces. And so the North Node in Pisces is asking for us to trust that the divine has a plan for us, that we are growing and our soul is evolving and leaving this very brightly lit room into a dark room that we have no idea where we're going. But with it being Pisces, we're essentially kind of giving up our faith to the divine and saying, okay, divine, I'm really hoping there's no dark holes or like planks of the floorboard missing in this dark room that I don't have a light for, because you're like entering it and it's uncomfortable. And Venus in the superior position suggests that whatever Venus is bringing about, that desire for change, which at the same time our Lilith, our misdirected energy, is being focused on, we're looking at it, and then we have the impetus to change. Whatever that impetus and desire to change, it's directly advancing our soul growth. So just say, for example, Lilith manifests as like pornography or like game addiction or even like a substance addiction. This is really going to feel like a need to stop doing that behavior, cut that behavior out, really identifying that behavior and trying, not really maybe successfully, because we probably won't be successful to the Mercury retrograde the next day, but really trying to like figure out, where is this coming from and why am I doing this? And again, that superior position trine with Venus suggests that that desire that like we're gravitating towards, whether we're conscious of it or not, is unconsciously guiding us into uncomfortable spiritual growth that will allow us to understand what the divine's purpose is for our life and for our incarnation. And so the trine is of the nature of Jupiter. Jupiter is retrograde in his exaltation of Cancer. So whatever this change that we desire that's getting us towards a closer connection with divinity and a closer fulfillment of our spiritual alignment, it all has to do with showing up to nurture ourselves better in the Cancerian area of our chart, and essentially like giving ourselves the grace and the ability to keep that cup filled in that area of our life, which will inevitably help our spiritual evolutionary growth and help us show up as the people that we're supposed to be, the archetypal templates, so to speak. If you enjoy these astrological and spiritual narratives, I encourage you to check out Consciousness, Conjunctions, and Conversations. It's my weekly astrological and divination-based workshop. I hold it every Wednesday, 6:30 p.m., rain or shine. It's limited to 10 seats per week. You can sign up at the link in my bio. It's completely free. We go through the energy of last week and the subsequent week, and I teach you how to delineate where these transits are taking place in your spiritual journey. And if nothing else, it's a place for spiritual communion and a place for you to kind of take a bite off of the Slim Jim of astrology, so to speak, and kind of just get a bite as to like how to approach it for yourself and what we're really looking for when we look at astrology, because sometimes the practice and application of what to look for is sometimes more important than understanding how to delineate a very specific nuanced meaning for your life. You kind of have to know where to look to understand what things mean. The second thing is, if you're interested in booking a reading with me, you can book a reading with me in my DMs on TikTok, Instagram, or the link tree in my bio. I have menus posted on all three of those, and I have financial and hardship pricing available. So if you're affected by the current economic downturn, at least in the Western world, so to speak, do not fret. Shoot me a DM. Let me know what's going on with your situation. We'll work something out. So until I see you in my DMs for a reading, until I see you signed up for Consciousness, Conjunctions, and Conversations, which is a hell of a lot of fun, let me tell you, and I really hope to see you there, I will see you tomorrow for the cosmological narrative for Wednesday, the 19th, where we are going to unpack a lot. There's a kite forming, a new moon in Scorpio, a Mercury Cazimi, a Mercury and Sun opposite Uranus. Oh my goodness, there's a lot of energy to unpack, and that's going to be a dense one, and it's going to be a dense week for all of us. Not in a fatalistic, like, be afraid, just be ready for a lot of soul growth and a lot of transformation. And that is what happens every Scorpionic season, but this one is particularly heavy, and it fits since we're in a 9-year, we're in the year of the snake, we're shedding, we're getting close to the end of the year, we're a month away from the end of the year. We got to wrap things up. We got to make those transformations where they need so that we can, again, embody that Sagittarian energy that comes next and really get out in the world and explore what's out there, which is going to help us expand into these new people that we become in 2026. I will see you tomorrow for the cosmological reading for Wednesday. Y'all have a wonderful, productive, and safe Monday.